Why hello there internet, I'm CST from the Guild of Awesome, and today I'm reviewing Cyberpunk 2077. To start with, I need to say that I played this game on the PC, which is really the only way you can play it right now, and even then it's buggy as hell. I will get into the game's terrible launch later on. I should also mention that my capture software caused the game to start dropping frames, so if the frame rate in my footage looks kind of bad, I just want you to know that when I was not recording, the game ran smoothly. Cyberpunk 2077 is an open world first person shooter / RPG set in a future where merging technology with the human body is commonplace. The streets are ruled by rivaling gangs, and the rich multi-billion-dollar corporations pretty much rule the planet. The game is made by CD Projekt Red, the studio who made the masterpiece Witcher 3. Because of The Witcher 3 and the fact that this game has been teased for about 8 years now, expectations were extremely high, which is honestly kind of a problem in and of itself, but I'll get to that later on. Let's talk about gameplay. Primarily, this is a first-person shooter, and honestly there's not a lot of creativity on display in terms of guns. They're all the same type of guns that you'd see in any modern day shooter. There are a few exceptions, but you'd think in a sci-fi cyberpunk setting, you'd see a wider variety of weapons. There are different versions of weapons however, so there are regular bullet guns that can ricochet off walls, there are smart bullets that will track down your targets, and tech weapons that you can charge your shots for extra damage, and they can penetrate through cover. The recoil and the sounds that the guns make them feel powerful. That and the fact that you can literally blast enemies to pieces. You can modify your guns with mods and attachments. You can add a silencer and a scope to certain weapons, which will have their own stats increases and decreases, as well as their own modifiers. With the mods, you can increase the stats of a weapon, or turn the gun's damage into non-lethal damage, as well as many other effects. Attacking with your fists or using melee weapons is an option. Melee weapons are very fun, especially the mantis blades. With these, your charge attack leaps you forward towards your target, and it's just so satisfying to dash between enemies, slicing and dicing. You have a mix of light and heavy attacks, blocking and dodging, though the only thing you will be doing is heavy attacks, as they stun lock enemies. There are both lethal and non-lethal melee weapons for you to choose from depending on your playstyle. Fighting with your fists is another thing altogether. I can count on one hand how many fistfights I got into throughout the game, and to see how little you actually fight people barehanded, the system is actually pretty deep and satisfying, but it does have two fatal flaws. I'll get into those flaws in just a second. There is a mix of light combos and heavy charge attacks. You can dodge to avoid enemies, block and counter enemy attacks. Despite its fun and relatively complex fist fighting system, it's broken. You can stun lock enemies by spamming heavy attacks, and even though it drains your stamina, just take a few steps back to regain it all, and then stun lock the enemy again. Another problem is that enemy attacks will gravitate towards you unnaturally. It makes the hitbox detection seem unfair, and it just looks wrong. Grenades are also in the game, but I barely use them. There are a variety of different grenades however, and each of them apply different types of status effects. You have the ability to hack enemies and the environment. This can deal damage or confuse them. There are abilities called quick hacks, which in other games would be called spells. You acquire quick hacks throughout the game, and all of them have different effects and strengths. These quick hacks can range from non-lethal stuff like temporarily blinding an enemy, making them forget that they've detected you if you're sneaking around, and there's also lethal stuff like setting an enemy on fire or electrocuting them. You can also hack stuff in the environment. If you've ever played Watch Dogs, it's pretty much the exact same here. You can hack into and control cameras, turn turrets to attack enemies instead of you, open electronic doors, or even hack into stuff just to make a distraction. Stealth works really well. Sneaking up behind enemies to take them down silently, or use a silenced weapon to take them out at a distance. But what makes it work really well is the design of the map and the buildings. There are always multiple different ways into a building. In fact, the verticality in this game is fantastic. Climbing on top of buildings to find a subtle way in, or just parkouring around the map is possible due to its handcrafted design. The RPG elements really sell the game. You have attributes like intelligence, body, reflexes, etc. And when you level up, you can increase one of these attributes. Doing so increases the skills that are tied to said attribute, so increasing your cool attribute helps your sneaking skill. Your attributes also unlock unique dialogue options that can get you different endings to quests. You can only do certain actions if your attributes are high enough. For example, you have to have enough points in the body attribute to force open doors. You'll need a high intelligence stat to hack into some computers and so on. You also have skills like pistols, stealth, engineering. These work in the exact same way as the Elder Scrolls series. If you sneak around, your stealth skill will increase. If you craft items, then your crafting skill increases. Sprint around to increase your athletic skill. Each skill has its own perk tree. When you level up, or if you increase the skill enough times, you earn a perk point. You can spend these points on perks, and these can range from unlocking new abilities to increasing the damage you do with certain weapons. The game is a looter shooter. Guns, armour and crafting components are stuffed into containers, chests and enemies' pockets. As well as weapons, you also collect armour, which comes with its own stat boosts and mods. There is a big problem with the armour system, and that's that you can't change the appearance of a piece of clothing, making it one of those games where you look ridiculous in order to get the best stats. It's rare that you actually see your own character, but whenever I did, I hated the clothes I was wearing. There is a handful of cosmetic only outfits that override your armour choices, but I only found 3 in my entire playthrough, and I didn't even like them that much. Also, equipping an outfit locks you out of changing some armour pieces, so it's more annoying than anything. You are able to add cybernetic parts to your body. These can boost your stats, unlock new abilities, or add some cool new weapons like the mantis blades that I mentioned earlier. The wrist rocket is also a lot of fun. Driving sucks. Although there are a wide variety of vehicles to purchase, every car has a huge turning radius, and driving on roads feels like you're driving on ice. God forbid you go off-roading, because then it feels like you're driving along a bouncy castle. The wanted system is terrible and broken. It was actually rare that I got the attention of the police, but once I did, the cops will spawn randomly around you. I tested this by going to the top of a building, and the cops would just spawn from a dead end, or directly behind me. It's a really bare bones system that is obviously not finished yet. The game has a ton of side quests to complete, however I'd only say that 1/4 of them are worthwhile. The remaining 3/4 are just really basic. Go here, kill people, go here, steal something, with not a lot of narrative attached. The 1/4 that are good, however, are just fantastic. Story-rich quests with interesting characters and lots of different choices and endings. I also love how these side quests are spread out for the game. The side quest isn't just do this one thing and then it's over. It's a full-on narrative that's told throughout the course of the game. If more of the side quests were like this, it would improve the game drastically. There are a bunch of blue missions all over the map. These are a complete waste of time. There are so many of them and every single one is just go here and kill people, with only a single text log of a story to justify it. Honestly, I would prefer it if these were removed from the game entirely. It's just time-wasting bullshit that Ubisoft put in their open world games. The map is quite large, but it is filled with fast travel points. This makes getting around really easy. The city is full of life with large buildings that feel cramped together. The streets are just filled with people. The walls are covered in lights and advertisements. The design of the city is really well done. Outside of the city, there is a desert where the nomads live, and just outside the city limits, there's this wasteland just filled with rubbish. Overall, I really like the design of the map in this game. The controls could use some improvement. I played with a controller for the majority of the game, and only used the keyboard and mouse to test how it is compared to the controller. On a controller, skipping the dialogue and crouching to sneak is the same button, meaning I often accidentally skipped some dialogue when trying to crouch or vice versa. It was kind of funny being stuck crouching when we're in a group talking to each other. On keyboard, I did find the key bindings to be a bit awkward. You also can't control your character's walking speed, so if you're following an NPC, oftentimes you would sprint ahead of them and wait for them to catch up and then do it again. Also, dodging is done by pressing one of the WASD keys twice, which during a fight would happen a lot, meaning I would dodge out of cover. I ran the game at 1080p 60fps, and performance-wise the game ran really well. There were 3 occasions where the frame rate got stuck in the 10s, but restarting the game fixed this, so I believe it was just a bug. For reference, my PC specs are the following. CPU is an Intel i9 7900X, 3.30GHz with 10 cores. My graphics card is a single Nvidia GeForce RTX 2080 Ti, and I have 32GB of RAM. The game was also installed on an SSD, and speaking of the SSD, load times were very short. There were only 3 occasions where the game had to pause itself and load the map while I was running around. But after playing for over 60 hours, I don't think that's that much of a problem. Graphically, the game is so beautiful. The reflections on the water and the ground, the detail on the character's design, the detail on the city, the lighting, it's all so breathtaking. Honestly, I look at the characters in this and I can see that this is the next step in the terms of graphics. There's also so much detail on the animations. Characters move so naturally and interact with the environment seamlessly. There's a lot of nuances that make the characters move believably, and the facial animations are on point. I love the music in this game. Obviously it's a lot of punk, a lot of synth and electrica. The combat themes fit really well. They really get the blood flowing. I love the story. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it is one of the best stories I've played in a while. The premise is really interesting, and over the course of the game, you meet a whole bunch of well-developed characters, with lots of depth to them. Your main character can be one of 3 backgrounds. It's similar to how Dragon Age Origins worked. So you pick a background for your character. You have a choice of Nomad, Street Kid, or Corporation Suit. These backgrounds change the very beginning of the game. They also have their own side quests which are unique to them. They also have their own unique dialogue options. The overall tone of the game is really dark. There were several points in the game that left me feeling disturbed. In fact, when I first started this, I wanted to do a stealth, non-lethal run. So during the tutorial, I silently knocked out a bunch of gangsters before making it to the final room and discovered the horrible things these gangsters were doing to people. So I went back and shot them all in the head. Then I went back to trying to be non-lethal again, only to keep finding horrible people doing terrible things. So I just started killing people that I thought were too horrible to live. I even killed a few who were part of the main story, and the game actually acknowledged this and changed slightly because of my actions. I basically started off as Daredevil and then turned into the Punisher. I fucking loved it. The ending of the game is done really well. Depending on your choices, the last section has 3 different gameplay sections that are all different to each other. I found 7 endings to the game. Maybe there's more I haven't discovered yet, but I'm not certain. Playing through these endings sent me on a roller coaster of emotions. One of them made me cry, another really fucked with my head, but I'm not going to give any more details than that. Keanu Reeves plays Johnny Silverhand. He is actually a main character who follows you everywhere. I've seen people asking if he's just a celebrity cameo, but he's not. He's there in every single mission, giving his thoughts and on the situation. There are lots of moments through the game where you just sit down and talk and develop each of his characters. There were 2 issues with the story. On 2 occasions, a character goes from trying to kill you to becoming your friend in just one conversation. It's really bizarre. It's almost like some scenes were cut or skipped somehow. The other problem is that one of the endings I got was taking continuity from one of the 3 ending gameplay segments that I didn't actually do. So if other people did the same choices that I did, it would have been really confusing as hell if they hadn't seen the other endings. I beat the main story in 54 hours, but that's with completing a bunch of side quests, and overall it took me 67 hours to 100% the game. Honestly, I think if you just blasted through the main story, you'd be done in 10 to 15 hours or so. So let's get onto the reason this game is causing mass refunds and tanking CD Projekt Red's reputation. This game is buggy as hell, and on consoles the game is unacceptable. So on the PC it runs well, as I mentioned earlier, but it's so goddamn buggy. Game breaking bugs wise, my game would crash when reading text logs. One side quest broke and would not start, and I mentioned before how the frame rate would get stuck in the 10s, so I had to restart the game. Now besides game breaking stuff, there are still so many goddamn bugs. Now I wasn't recording all the time, so I may not have footage for them, but I did list the bugs that I encountered. If you change the audio device mid-game, then the sound will go through both audio devices. Characters are T-posing all over the place, T-posing while in the cars, like stood up going through the roof, which was rather funny. When you're doing races, the rivals will teleport behind and in front of you, which was very annoying. My main character doesn't have a reflection. Maybe this is something that's been fucked up from my settings. I had everything on max, so I don't know why I wouldn't have a reflection, but whatever. Reflections are just broken in general, not rendering a lot of the model of the characters that are there. Whenever I looked in a mirror, my character was bald. In fact, a lot of the time my character was bald. I think it's because I was wearing a hat and the game just didn't recognise that from cutscenes. One time I tried going through a window and got sent flying across the map. Walking downhill gave me fall damage and would oftentimes kill me. Objects get stuck flying in the air sometimes. Subtitles and UI elements would get stuck on screen. Dialogue would sometimes just skip ahead randomly. The enemy AI would fail sometimes and would just stand there while I shot them. And those are just the ones that I encountered. There are so many more examples that people are sharing on Reddit. Now on consoles, matters are much worse. The graphics have been gutted to make it even run, but the game still can't even reach 30 FPS on the PS4, PS4 Pro, Xbox One, and One X. The game will run at an acceptable level on the new gen of consoles, that's the PS5 and Xbox Series S, but on the last gen, the game is downright unacceptable. The game has been removed from both the PlayStation and Xbox stores, and rightfully so. Refunds are being offered to console players, so at the very least CD Projekt Red are taking the right steps to try and resolve this issue. Patches are scheduled to come out for the next few months, so hopefully the game will be in a better state sometime next year. Cyberpunk should not have been released in its current state. It needed a few more months to cook, but CD Projekt Red got greedy and wanted to capitalise on the Christmas rush. This game could have easily been a 10 out of 10. Even without the bugs and its terrible console launch, it still has problems, yes. But no game is perfect. It has solid gameplay, with a really interesting story, and well-written characters that I will remember for years to come. but I can't judge this game on what I think it will become. In its current state is what I have to review it at, and its current state on PC is an 8 out of 10. The same goes for the PS5 and Xbox Series X. And for the PS4 and Xbox One, it is a 0 out of 10. I genuinely hope CD Projekt Red can turn this around. I hope they fix the game and release an acceptable version of the game for the last gen consoles. I hope to see some DLC, I hope to see more of the characters, I hope to see more of the story. I sincerely want people to know that despite the well-deserved shit that's being slung at the game and CD Projekt Red, there is a fantastic game here. So that's all for the game, but there are a few things I want to talk about. The topics I'm about to bring up I don't hold against the game in my review, but I feel like these things need to be talked about. First off, despite CD Projekt Red promising that they won't force employees to do crunch work, which is a form of abuse which employees are forced to work insane hours and work to ridiculously short deadlines. But that's exactly what happened. Crunch should not be acceptable. It's abuse and it's far too common in the gaming industry. Secondly, the game can cause seizures, as there are multiple sections where bright lights are flashed into the camera directly. I cannot believe an oversight such as this has made it into development. In response to the backlash to the seizure-inducing parts of the game, CD Projekt Red has put this easy-to-miss text that appears at the start of the game. To me, that's unacceptable. As soon as they heard that it can cause seizures, they should have made you pick an option before the game starts to disable the seizure-inducing events. Thirdly, the lies and dishonesty that CD Projekt Red have been spewing for the past few months. First off, they said the game could run on consoles perfectly, and of course they would say that. They wouldn't say it ran like dog shit because then people wouldn't have bought it. They also tried to manipulate the reviews. As part of the review embargo, reviewers who got an early copy of the game could only show footage provided by CD Projekt Red until the 10th of December. Then you could show your own footage after that. That means if a reviewer was playing on the console version, they could only show a perfect, bug-free 60fps footage that was obviously not captured from a console. This is downright unacceptable. This attempt to manipulate the first wave of reviews is disgusting. This should be illegal. I think from this, we should learn not to pre-order games anymore. The game had made back its development costs from pre-orders alone. This is a prime example as to why you should not pre-order games, because companies will straight up lie to sell you the game. They also tied employee bonuses to the game's metacritic scores. They have now changed that decision due to the backlash, but the fact that they're going to go ahead with this ridiculous practice is pretty telling that the leadership at CD Projekt Red treat their employees like shit. Okay, I'm done. That's all I have to say about CD Projekt Red's awful management and terrible business practices. What I would like to say is to please do not harass these developers. I've seen some CD Projekt Red staff quit social media after receiving harassment and death threats. That is disgusting to me. I don't know why people go out of the way to do that shit over a video game. It's fucking ridiculous. It's not even the developer's fault. The issues that Cyberpunk has lies entirely on upper management. They are the ones who chose to release the game before it's finished. They are the ones who chose to lie and manipulate the media. They're the ones who tried to hide the unacceptable state the game is in. But even then, don't harass them. Just show your feelings with your wallet. Voting with your wallet is the only thing that corpo suits will listen to. Thank you for watching and stay awesome.